Hello, congratulations. You have made it. I guess I could back up one slide. You just finished the ACT, which is so exciting. And now we have less than 8 weeks until you're a senior. Okay. So this is American literature and composition. And if you think back to how we started with indigenous literature, right? So those are Native Americans who did a lot of storytelling in order to kind of keep their traditions and their main stories for their culture alive. Okay. So we're kind of coming full circle with that idea because now with this final unit, what you're going to do is you're going to create a personal narrative. So it's not going to just be any story now, but instead you are going to write a personal narrative. So that is writing about your own life. Okay. And that's going to be how we finish this unit. Okay. So we have 4 essential questions that are going to guide us through this. And your writing of your own personal narrative isn't going to be until the very end of this unit. So we got a lot of things that we're going to kind of get through and be exposed to before we even get to the actual writing of your personal narrative. And so these 4 guiding questions that I am going to show are going to be something to help us as we read other people's stories, as we listen to other people's stories, and then also just kind of have in the back of our own mind. So that way we know that we're truly growing and developing as we kind of continue through this unit. Okay, so our first question is, what makes us who we are? There are a billion different ways to answer this, and we all have our own different perspective, right? So, what makes us who we are is a question that we're going to want to be able to answer more concretely by the end of this unit. Our next question is, how does identity affect people's relationships with others, status, and society? So, how does identity affect the way you interact with the world? Our next one is, why does the way we identify ourselves matter, right? Do you think it's important, right? And why? And then our last question is, how does American society shape who we are? So thinking specifically of American literature, right? And American identities and American stories within, what does that factor of being American kind of do when shaping who you are as an individual? So these are our essential questions, right? We are going to use these throughout the unit. We're going to think about them, and we will hopefully be able to answer them strongly by the end. So in this unit, as I've already started to kind of touch on, is we are going to read personal narratives and memoirs. We are going to listen to personal stories, right, of a whole bunch of different Americans. We're going to analyze the themes, structures, and literary devices within these stories because, once again, our goal is going to be for you to write your own, right? And through looking at examples and analyzing how other people have written their personal narratives, you'll kind of gain inspiration. And that's kind of what this last 4 step is, right? Reflect on your own identities and create your own personal narrative. That's kind of what is at the end of our unit and what we are working towards. Okay. So the materials, I'll kind of just go over quickly. What we are going to get to today is this short story called Leaving Venezuela. Okay. It's about a main character from Venezuela who comes to America. So he's an immigrant and loves soccer and has a big kind of turnaround in life and has a lot of difficulties that he has to face. And it's just his own story. Okay. And then we have a couple other short stories here. We have a TED Talk. We have a podcast. And then right here, number 4 is bolded, righting my wrongs. That's going to be our main text for this unit. And we'll get to that around next week. Okay. So these are our materials that we'll be looking at. There's a lot on the screen right now, but we have a lot of time left in the school year. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're kind of staying on track and getting enough examples in so that way you're set up for success. Okay. So in this unit, we are going to read and listen to a lot of different stories of life, which I just showed you on that previous screen. All of which I chose, right, as your teacher, because they will serve as a good example for when you write your own. Okay, I keep on emphasizing and stressing the fact that at the end of this unit, you will have to write your own. Okay, so it's really important that you pay attention and you look at all these different sorts of stories and gather them as inspiration. Okay. So all of which I chose because they will serve as a good example for when you write your own. Pay attention to how they are written and think of the strategies that the author must have used to write a good personal narrative. Okay, so kind of just that little factoid to keep in the back of your mind. Right here, I have your rubric that you will be graded on, okay? So you are going to have to come up with a topic, right, which is your life, your personal narrative. You're still going to have the simple like essay tasks that will be given to you, right? You'll have to have an introduction, you'll have to group it correctly, but then you'll have to have narrative techniques, which we haven't really talked about and we haven't really practiced a whole lot, but we've been exposed to literary devices. We know what dialogue is. And dealing with literary devices for Harlem Renaissance, we had that entire unit where we looked at literary devices and looked at the purpose of them. You're now going to use them on your own to kind of create your own story, and then tone as well. And so in addition to those things, you're going to have like style, you're going to want to be able to write well, and then also make sure you're using good conventions, so good standard English. The reason why I'm showing you this rubric right now, right, I want you to have in the back of your mind that this is the end goal. This is what you're working towards. And so when we are exposed to these different personal narratives, gather inspiration for when it's your turn. Okay. So take note of the literary devices they use. So those are things like metaphors, simile, hyperbole, personification, a whole bunch of things, right? Take note of their use of dialogue. There's some texts where you'll see a whole bunch of dialogue. Okay. So that's kind of like conversation where you get insight to certain characters. There's going to be some that use a lot of that. And there's going to be other texts that we look at that there's not much dialogue. Today, there will be a little bit. You could also look at their storytelling methods, the transitions that they use. Some personal narratives are very chunked off because if you're saying your entire life story, right, you don't have the time or capacity to say every little detail. Therefore, you need to chunk. And then others are a little bit more fluid. It's like one short section where their personal narrative is written. Okay, so their transitions and then how they start, what their middle looks like, and how they finish as well. Okay, so these are just things I want you to take note of. And then kind of wrapping up with what we are going to be doing this unit and explaining that and kind of transferring on over to actually starting it. This is going to be the first story that we look at in this unit, and it's called Leaving Venezuela. Okay, so Venezuela is a country in the top part of South America. As I already mentioned, right, it's going to be about a person that comes to America and becomes an American, but is from Venezuela and has a very interesting story, okay? So you are all done with this lesson. I hope you are looking forward to what we are going to look and read at this unit. Because I'm looking very forward to it, and I'm looking forward to all the personal narratives that you guys come up with. So use this as inspiration. We are going to be good to kind of start off with this today and enjoy this reading in class.